In my opinion, there's nothing better than coming out into the garden, seeing these beautiful cucumbers, and eating them right from the garden. Ugh. But what if they're bitter? In today's episode, we're gonna talk about 5 reasons why your cucumbers are getting bitter. Let's go. So the first reason why your cucumbers are as bitter is that girl that broke up with you in high school before your glow up and now wants to get back with you, but you don't want to get back with her, has everything to do with the variety of cucumber that you chose. Certain varieties of cucumbers have a tendency to get bitter faster than others. Take, for example, this pickling cucumber. Pickling cucumbers, because they have those bumps on them, those bumps actually have an enzyme that can get bitter as they get older. And so they're often used as a pickling cucumber because of the fact that once you pickle them, most of that bitterness goes away. Now, a lot of the bitterness is also in the skin of the cucumber. It's caused from a chemical called cucurbitacein, and that's actually the same chemical that attracts cucumber beetles to your cucumbers. And so that's why oftentimes it's recommended to grow a fresh eating cucumber, like this muncher cucumber or any greenhouse cucumber that does not have those burrs, because those burrs, like I said, contain most of that enzyme, which can actually make the cucumber pretty bitter. One way to not have a bitter cucumber, though, is by harvesting it early. The earlier you harvest it, the better, regardless of the variety. We'll talk more about that. The second reason why your cucumbers are as bitter as Kevin Jonas is, because he was never as popular as Nick and Joe, is because of the time you're harvesting your cucumbers. You see, any cucumber, regardless of the type, can get bitter if you let it sit on the plant too long. So when we're harvesting cucumbers, there's kind of a certain ideal size. If you harvest it too soon, you're just not getting the most bang for your buck, but it's gonna be really tender, hardly any seeds, very thin skin. It's gonna be awesome. But you might not get as much bang for your buck because it could get bigger. But you leave it on the vine too long, even a day past its prime, and it gets bitter as all get out. And so what you wanna do is you wanna harvest on the earlier side rather than the later side. Always err on the side of caution with cucumbers because they can go from tender and sweet to bitter and tough in a heartbeat, very fast. And so if we're coming in here and we're harvesting, say, a pickling cucumber, I'm gonna pick this, but it's highly not recommended. It's super underdeveloped, right? If I was to take this, you could let this go for another 3 or 4 days, no problem. Or you can make some little table cucumbers or table pickles with a little, like a charcuterie board. Awesome. But it's a little bit wasteful. So tender and so sweet. There's no bitterness at all. Compare that to this cucumber here that sat a little bit. This cucumber, it's really formed a lot of those burrs. Some of the seeds are starting to form on the inside. I know it's bitter because I tasted it the first time. Oh, it tastes like soap. So bitter. It's really not a good one. Ugh. Now, the reason why your cucumbers get bitter as they sit on the vine longer is because they're maturing. You see, cucumbers don't have much of a protection mechanism because these spines here, they're pretty much obsolete. Nothing would be afraid of them. Now, a long time ago, before these were domesticated, they had thorns and spines on the stem, much like, a blackberry or a raspberry, or even like a zucchini has some pretty good spines. These have really been bred out to basically be just like a really fine sandpaper almost, not even coarse at all. And so to protect themselves, they get bitter because inside of those unformed cucumbers that you're eating have the potential to be seeds. And as that fruit begins to ripen, it needs to protect itself. And so that is the reason why cucumbers get bitter the older they get, because if a hungry animal comes and eats the cucumber, it eventually would form seeds. And so because it wants to create seeds to continue its biodiversity and its lineage, it gets bitter. So harvest your cucumbers early, and that will keep them from getting bitter. The third reason why your cucumbers are as bitter as that soap that your mom used to wash out your mouth with is because you're not watering them enough. When you water your cucumbers, you want to water them heavily and deeply. And that's because cucumbers are a fruit that stores most of the water that's found in the plant in the fruits. Cucumbers themselves are about 97% water. That means they're 3% other, right? So 97% of that cucumber is water. If you get a cucumber that gets dehydrated, what it does is it tightens that skin up, forces itself to start to kind of thicken the skin, protect it, conserve water. And since that fruit itself is what you're eating, what you're really getting is more of that enzyme that's being concentrated, the cucurbitacein. Since it's concentrated in the stem, the flowers, and the skin of the cucumber, you're essentially getting everything all in one rather than diluting it down with some water. And that's what's happening when you don't water your cucumbers. Now, a lot of people, when they grow their cucumbers, they don't want to water a lot because they fear getting something like powdery mildew on the leaves. Now, that shouldn't happen if you're pruning your cucumbers properly. We've got a video on that. Definitely shouldn't happen if they're up on a trellis with good airflow. Just did a video on that. It also shouldn't happen in mid-season. Oftentimes, powdery mildew happens when you water your cucumbers a lot later on in the season when it gets cool and damp. The days are not as long, so you have water sitting on the leaves longer. That is really when you start to get things like powdery mildew. I come through here and I water these cucumbers. Even though we have cores in these beds, I would still water these cucumbers about 2 to 3 times a week. And that's because I want my cucumbers to take up all that water. The cucumbers, they'll go from a tiny cucumber to a giant cucumber in like 3 or 4 days. And that is all due to that water. And so we water them heavily, we water them often. I do not worry about things like powdery mildew because the soil is very fertile. I don't worry about washing nutrients away. They respond very well to it. And because of that, I have a far better tasting cucumber. That's also why cucumbers grown hydroponically have more of an appeal than cucumbers that are field grown. Field grown cucumbers are typically grown for pickles rather than fresh eating. And that's why a lot of the fresh eating cucumbers you see are those long, slender cucumbers in the grocery store, and they say greenhouse on them. And often that's just why, is because they're grown in water hydroponically, meaning there's way more water for that plant to plump up those fruits, and they just are way less bitter. The fourth reason why your cucumbers are more bitter than the trolls that I blocked is because of the time of year that you're growing cucumbers. See, cucumbers can grow all season. It's a misconception to think that cucumbers are a hot weather crop. Cucumbers can grow during hot weather, but oftentimes the production slows down, if not completely stops, until the weather actually gets cooler. And so what a lot of people end up having happen is they grow cucumbers, they force them into fruiting through watering very frequently, but nothing can stop your cucumbers from getting bitter if it's just really hot. And that's because heat is a form of stress. And stress will form the cucumber to actually, again, just like with a lack of water, will form the skin to tighten up, will form the seeds to form prematurely, and it'll actually tell the plant that it needs to push those seeds through to completion so that it can actually reproduce. And so if it gets too hot, your cucumbers will just be very bitter. And so what you can do is plant cucumbers in the early season and in the fall for a fall harvest. We've got videos on that as well, if you want to have bitterless cucumbers. Now, your cucumbers, like I said, are always going to get bitter if you leave them on the vine long. But we're talking about cucumbers that you could eat them at a teeny tiny size and they still taste like a bar of soap. And that is just because of hot weather. And so I know it's very discouraging to go out there thinking you're gonna have a beautiful cucumber to slice onto your salad, and instead you might as well just take a bar of soap and shave that into your salad greens. And that's because it just gets super bitter from the heat. And so keep that in mind. Your cucumbers are going to thrive, they're gonna survive. They might just not fruit that much during the hot weather, and that's sometimes to your benefit, because if they did produce fruit, they would just be bitter anyways. All right, and the fifth reason why your cucumbers are more bitter than my high school teacher that gave me a D- on my senior thesis because I said I wanted to be a professional gardener, and she said that was not a valid career path. Well, look at me now, is because of pest pressure. Now, pest pressure, it goes without saying that they suck the life out of your plants, whether it be aphids, whiteflies, spider mites, cucumber beetles. It can actually begin to stress the plant out because those insects are feeding off of the sugars created through photosynthesis, and that is less energy that the plant can use to continue to grow. And so if you have a lot of pest pressure, it can actually cause your plants to send a stress pheromone, and that stress pheromone can basically spread to all the other plants where it says, hey, I need help. And what happens is when that one plant gets stressed, a lot of the other plants get signal of that. And scientists have actually been able to find out that when one plant gets stressed, your other plants can actually show signs of stress as well, leading to premature fruit ripening, premature seed development, the thickening of the skin, which again all leads to bitter cucumbers. And so I'd highly recommend following up with your plants. Again, picking the right time of year as well. You know, these things do all kind of go hand in hand. If it's really dry out, your plants are going to have bitter cucumbers, but having really dry conditions is a stressor. Having it be really hot out is a stressor, right? Having pest pressure, the pests can come in because it gets really dry and the plants are already stressed. So it can kind of be a compounding reason or kind of an additional kind of reason why pests show up is because of stress, but all of that stress can compound, leading to very bitter cucumbers. Consider spraying your plants down. Consider spraying them down with something like neem oil or pyrethrum. Consider using a insecticidal soap. Making sure to always check the undersides of your leaves. Always do that. Coming out in early morning to look for pests, as well as midday to look for pests. Certain pests will come at different times of the day, but check your plants periodically. Don't just let them go forever until they start to produce fruit and then grab the fruit and walk inside, because you might be surprised that your fruits are inedible, when you could have caught it early on, remediated the problem, and your cucumbers can then become, not as bitter. And the final thing I'll say is that a lot of you will ask me, well, Luke, once a cucumber starts to get bitter, can you make it go unbitter by, say, watering it more? And the answer is no. That's one of the things that I want to send you guys home with and finish up with, is that once a cucumber gets bitter, it doesn't get unbitter. Future fruits can be less bitter, but that fruit that was bitter will always be bitter. And so catch your fruits early, harvest them early, keep your plant stress-free, and you should be fine. But I know it's discouraging, but it can also be very encouraging, because cucumbers have a long growing season. They produce a ton of fruits per plant, and so I'd highly recommend trying them. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to hit the green like button. Green thumbs up means you liked the video. Help spread this video around to more people. And also, make sure you share this video with a friend that you think might enjoy it or has had bitter cucumbers. I think they might enjoy it as well. So as always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow bigger. Take care. Bye. Hey, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed, consider checking this one out. You'll probably enjoy it just as much. I want to thank you so much for your viewership, because without it, this channel would not be as amazing as it is. If you haven't subscribed yet, it's free. Consider doing that. We upload every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, rain or shine. And if you need any garden tools, supplies, or seeds, check out MIgardener.com. We got you covered. See you guys in the garden. Bye.